Yeah, can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Okay, thanks a lot. Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me, Cassie. I'm going to speak about IT risk management, specifically in critical infrastructure. And it's a complicated subject. I wish I could show you the work I do, but unfortunately, it's restricted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present two cases, and hopefully I can give you an impression of how I work with the infrastructure in a matter where I apply the IT risk management framework. So you hear me, Cassie? You look.
Yes, indeed, very well. Thank you very much.
But before I start, I would like to kind of introduce you to some context. So click, Cassie. Thank you. Oh, it's come together now. Okay, this is a layer of 3. I thought it was kind of in more than one step. Then I'll take the steps for you. Underneath this, you can see some infrastructure. Oh, what's happening? Oh, thank you. As you can see here, this is old infrastructures visible to the eye. And we all know that these infrastructures has made a huge impact on our society. Click. Yeah. We have now some new infrastructures that are emerging, and they are less visible. They're digital, and they're based on IT. So, click. In a damage or a breakdown, it's easy to see if a bridge is collapsing, but if IT is going down, we kind of don't know what's happening behind the screen. So IT risk management has a role to play here. It's relevant as a tool for C-level, for the whole organization to come together to kind of get a model of and a framework of how should we deal with things happening behind the screen. That's what I'm going to talk about now today. So would you go to the next slide? Yeah. So IT risk management is important to be able to run a more and more digital business. So the cases I'm bringing today is about how to do that. So the next. Yeah. But first, a little bit about me. I was introduced. I'm working from Black Swan Institute. I've been in the company for 6 years. It's also my own company. I've based most of my knowledge from 20 years of building a digital infrastructure. Firstly, I did that for the Danish government, and now I'm working with the transportation and financial institutions. So I'm going to speak from that platform. You can see at right some of the customers I've worked with during the years, and I can say I'm kind of having two perspectives. I have a knowledge of digital, and I have been working with applying the risk framework because it's so useful. And I'm gonna, of course, tell you why I find it so useful. I also work with small and medium-sized enterprises as a chairman of the Danish Business Committee, but that's something I do on the side because I think digital and risk is important to all companies, smaller or larger. So the cases today I'm going to present is from the financial sector. And if you click, case 1. This case is it's the critical financial infrastructure, and I have worked with the VP securities that is handling all the value papers, the National Bank of Denmark, and the financial institutions. They are Finance Denmark, and Enet. I can't remember what the name is in English, but they are kind of operating for Finance Denmark when it comes to settling the money every 24 hours. These are my 4 actors, and what I have done with them, it's kind of they have figured out that is really not about themselves. It's about collaborating. It's about that they share infrastructure. So it's okay for them to have a risk management within their own company. But what they really needed was to come together and you can say implement and establish a governance for cooperating. So what have we done? At right, you can see the approach. We have been mapping what systems, platforms, infrastructure, and network are they dependent on, so they could get kind of a shared perspective and picture of where are they partners, where are they vulnerable to each other's. And they have also worked with a prioritization, saying what is critical to us. There's a lot of systems, there's a lot of shared things, but what is really critical to us? Where can we set off the whole financial system in Denmark? Well, that have been defined. They have also built upon the international risk management standard, the ISO 27005, and a standard that is for settlements, CPMI, YOSCO. So they will be able to kind of work in the same manner, with the same processes, the same data model, and so on. They have also built, you can say, on a first floor, on top of their own risk governance, they have established a governance so they can make fast decision making, and they can kind of escalate high risk as the corona to a higher level, to a government level, and to the decision making parties. One of them is the FSOR, that is critical infrastructure and security. They have also implemented an annual cycle so they can make sure that there's a performance and a progress. That's some of the tools. So what have they done? Well, there have been applied 3 perspectives: an asset management perspective. And to come back to what I said before, well, if it was a bridge, we could all see it. But if you have critical infrastructure, well, it's behind the screen. So what is actually critical infrastructure? Who is our suppliers and how does it look? So a kind of applying an asset management across the companies. So how does it look? Make visibilities. Yeah, that was a hard word. That was one thing. Another perspective they have applied is how to have a supply chain perspective. Who's the customer? Who's supplying, and who's, if it's outsourced or cloud-based infrastructure, who's actually making the infrastructure work? So this end-to-end perspective, that have been quite interesting because in some sense, most of the actors have been, you could say, obtained with their own company and their own governance. But when it comes to looking at a service, from a customer perspective, you could say from a bank and from an institute, all to maybe an outsourced service, another in India or another place, then you kind of need to get this overview and get all the suppliers on board. So that have been valuable to the partners. Also, the governance perspective I mentioned before, to be able to cooperate in something established on top of what they have, so they kind of work in the same framework. So that's the one of the cases I think that is quite unique. Few engage with each other in such a close cooperation, and I think it's a very interesting case. It has been interesting to me, but also I can see that it's really giving them something back. One very valuable things have been that most of the actors have kind of updated their own risk management framework after working together. I think that's a kind of a good conclusion after spending time and money on establishing this. Okay, the next. Case 2. This case, you can see, is kind of linked to the first one, and though not. This is a case from one of the suppliers. I also work with one of their suppliers. Sorry, and here it's more a focus on the coming from a security and compliance context and to implement overall risk management so that they get this control they need to be working with case one. So it's if you look at the right of the slide, it's the same approach. Everyone needs to map system, platforms, infrastructure, and network, have an asset management, because as I said before, it's not that visible. How many systems do we have? How do we name them? So this customer, they came from, you could say, if you look at a lot of systems, 3, 4, 5,000, to kind of make a structure to build on a principal model, so they could kind of define what are we risk assessing and what are we mitigating. And the reason that they started this was as a push from in Danish Finanstilsynet, it's called the FSA, from the authorities to say, hey, if you work with money, if you work in finance, you need to have IT risk management. You need to take care of the data. You need to secure this in your systems. So that was a push. And because of this push, we have updated from the security and compliance to IT risk management. So now we're working on this mapping, make priority. All systems, platforms, infrastructures, and networks have now a business criticality. That's very valuable to the C-level to know, hey, what should we focus on? What is valuable to the whole sector and what is just for us? So that's a good tool, and that was driven by the risk management. Also, they're building on standards of risk management because it's very nice to work in the same manner. And they have also implemented an annual cycle to make sure the whole organization are ready at the right time. So there's activity that happens every 6 months. So they come from risk assessing to be able to hand in the result and all the decisions and mitigation plans for the board of directors. That's really necessary to not lose everything on the table when if someone is not doing the activities. So the wheel is so important. Also, they've established a risk governance with some new things. They have a risk forum to debating risks, security, compliance, and they make sure that they make decisions across the business and not only in business line, first lines. So yeah, that was the second one. Click. As I said, I could not show you how we did it. I could tell about it, but I want to kind of take an overview and kind of give you an impression of what we have obtained with these two cases. So in this slide, I would like to kind of make you look at a very interesting thing. IT risk management make companies clean up. I don't know if you've heard of AnneMarie, but this is this Japanese woman cleaning up in people's homes. Well, that's exactly what we also do in the companies by the IT risk management framework. So what is necessary? Yeah, it's necessary to kind of get control of what do we have. This was the asset management, and not clean up in departments, but clean up by category. Make sure you know what defines a system, a platform, infrastructure, and a network. What is the criticality? And get ready to make the risk assessment to know where are the highest risk. Because today we work in complexity, it's fast and it's messy. 30 years of IT have made a spaghetti structure. Everything is interconnected and it's necessary to tidy up everything. So AnneMarie cleanup is about tidy all at once, make visualization so everyone can see the systems. It's in drawings, of course. It's not a bridge, but make it visible. What do we have? Not 4,000 or 10,000 things, but we have what is the main systems, what is the actual critical infrastructure, get an impression of what are we working with, determine how they create value for the business, and make sure to maintain this category and tidy up while you do the business. So that was one thing that comes from IT risk management. And it takes years and it's really, really complicated, but it's necessary if you want to have a good IT risk management framework. Click. Next slide. Yeah. Could you move forward because this is a little bit messy slide? I want them all at once. Yes. And a slide more. This is kind of another return of investment. From these two cases, we found out that when the corona pandemic hit us all, well, the framework was really nice. Instead of C-level, we're turning around and make a committee and started to just talk about what does that mean. Well, in my cases, there was done a risk assessment with the impact of corona, and that was really nice to see that the framework actually did work, and we could present all the risks in the framework. So there was a test of did it work? Yes, it did work, because there was made a real risk assessment and it worked for the C-level as well. That's one thing. Another good value is the issue management. We have connected the issue management to the risk assessment. So in these cases, we've been, especially in the first one, the second one wants to do it, but they're not there yet. In the first case, we actually have identified issues. When we look 1-2 years back, we can see what risks actually happened, how big an effect did they have, and is there open issues that we need to apply to the risk assessments. So we kind of connect the two dots. It's a part of the framework, but I have seen so few actually connect them. But because we have a data model, we made it possible, and we can see now that we can say, oh, there's a risk, and we can see how big an impact did it have the last time it hit us. So that's another value. The last one is, if you work in a large financial organization and you need to make a business strategy, of course you do that. If you can kind of concentrate on what is business critical, what is high risk, it's so much easier to get an overview. You cannot get an overview of everything. You need to kind of dig in, get insight to business criticality and risk, so that you can be fast in a complex and global context. So it's when it's in place, IT risk management can do something very nice to a company. I think that was my words. Thank you for presenting and sharing. Any questions?
So thank you very much, AnneMarie. Very interesting, and also very interesting with the cases that you have, so that we can go through exactly how you had implemented. We will have a question session, a panel later on. I hope you will be there to join us. But I would just like to ask you one question before we go to the next speaker, and that is, you introduced risk governance. We all know about good governance. We also know about IT governance. But could you please tell us about the differences and the similarities between the good governance, IT governance, and now the concept that you introduced called risk governance?
Yes, well, what we have done is we have aligned a risk governance to the good governance, you can say. So what we have done is that we have introduced some new, you could say, governance fora, a risk forum, and risk committee, and we have made sure that it is delivering their decisions to the board of directors. So we are kind of using the risk governance to make sure first line, second line, and third line get the same, you can say, the risk picture, and make decisions across all the business lines. So we're kind of adding to the good governance, you could say, by calling it a risk governance. But you could call it something else. It's just making sure the annual cycle is taking place, and that the risk owners are there and they make decisions. Does that make sense?
It does indeed, because you add the accountability